Welcome to the Longevity Protocol with Dr. Cristina Bosch and Dr. John A. Robinson. We'll be your guides to uncovering the secrets to optimal health, better sex, and happiness. From debunking aging myths to exploring the science behind what it means to live the Longevity Protocol, we'll dive into a wide range of topics. So, get ready for an exhilarating journey in what it means to live well and feel your very best at any age. Is marriage...
Yes.
You don't even know what I'm going to ask.
Sorry, go ahead.
You do. Is marriage the secret to a longer life?
Yes. Yes.
You think so?
I mean, it is for us. I don't know that it is for everyone, although I would propose that it is for more people than not.
Yes, I think we may find that out. I don't want to spoil everything for everyone listening and see what the answer really is. Yeah, we're gonna see whether or not maybe marriage is going to help you live longer. We want to ask today: do you have to be married or just in a relationship? Is there different benefits one way or the other? What are the effects of loneliness? So if you're not married or in a relationship at all, what are the effects? Me just saying the word looked like it was affecting you, huh? What is Takotsubo cardiomyopathy?
No sé.
Okay, well, we're gonna figure that out.
I mean, I know cardiomyopathy, but
yeah, with Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, we're gonna figure that one out today. And do single women live longer than single men? And I'm very excited about answering this and commenting to this particular point that we'll get to. Do single women just live longer? Is it better for women to be single
versus married?
Because that's a thing that's out there now. And we'll talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Get it.
You know, we can go into this loneliness concept first. It's kind of...
loneliness is not alone, by the way. Two separate things.
Yes. Yes. I think probably in how we're defining a lot of these things, and certainly the research with it, it probably does quite literally mean not like just
alone.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. Alone and being isolated. I think a lot of this is isolation.
Okay.
And interestingly, what isolation does to the heart. You know, it's okay.
That's so sad.
I just have to comment about COVID here for a quick second. The farce of COVID back in 2020. I mean, what an interesting kind of thing. You've got a virus that attacks the heart. You have now and then of course everyone was isolated, stay home, people aren't able to see their loved ones, and what that's then doing to the heart, and then put a vaccine on top of it that produces spike proteins that also aren't good for the heart. So it was literally an attack on the heart. I mean, that whole thing. And loneliness was a big part of what people were experiencing with that, probably uniquely for the first time in their lives, that people had never, I mean, the level of isolation that people were having to experience, it was just unprecedented. Yeah. I hated that word because I always kept saying that around that time, but it was unprecedented. We hadn't seen anything like that, certainly in those generations of seeing that level of isolation that inevitably led to a lot of problems. Then coupling it with alcohol, excessive alcohol intake, and all of what that can do to your heart. It was really a nasty combination. But focusing on the loneliness, that is equivalent to smoking a pack of cigarettes a day.
Ooh. Or
being obese.
Wow. Well, you know, interesting. Just because you mentioned COVID, I had this patient, she's 83 years old. So during pre-COVID, she would have been 78. Right. So, I mean, 83, we say, okay, well, that's elderly, but 78 is also for some people considered elderly. For some people, not for this woman. This was a woman whose cognition is intact. She does Pilates 4 times a week. She would travel the world still, with her girlfriends. I mean, this was an extremely vibrant person, regular on her hormone replacement, thyroid well managed, eats well, just so full of life, really sharp, just a super cool woman. Great fashion too. I was seeing her daughter in the office the other day and saying, hey, how's your mom doing? And the mom has just been doing very poorly over the past 4 years. It has been an extremely rapid decline. And the daughter always says, being alone for that year really
Yeah, she never
just
recovered.
about killed my mother.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like she recovered from
She
it.
never did. No, she didn't. She aged dramatically as if she were obese and had been smoking. I mean, she just became a sick person. It was very sad.
You know, I'll segue here. We can talk about it again. I think it's somewhere else in the notes, but the blue zones, these areas where people live to be 100 or more. Particular journalist actually that was responsible for studying this and bringing it to light. They studied 5 key different areas throughout the world, but there's many other areas of high concentrations of centenarians, people live to be 100 or more. But basically through what he looked at, they of course looked at diets and all of that, and they looked at many things. But really what was the most consistent was that idea of, do you have a sense of purpose and community and a support system? That was the more common thread throughout everything, because there was variances in the diet to some degree and the levels of activity. Certain things were variant. It was similar, but variant. But what was consistent was that. So really in the end, what is probably more important for longevity is company and being around people that are actually beneficial for you. You care about them, they care about you. There's a reciprocity that's going on in there.
And the feeling that you're important in someone's life.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about marriage, right? But just even within marriage, or especially within marriage, perhaps, I don't know. When you think about the ends of your life, how easy it is for people to decide to expire, to say, you know, I choose this no more, when they don't feel a tether to earth.
Yeah, like what's the point?
Right.
Yeah, and we see that, we understand that the average death after retirement, like focused, conscious retirement, it's about 3 years
for men.
Yeah, they just kind of like, well, that's it. I got no more purpose, and they don't know what else to do with their lives. They hadn't established any other passions, so they didn't properly plan. And that's what I tell my patients, and I have over the years now many that go into retirement, and we talk about that, about what's your plan? Like, what is your, like, oh, I'm going to retire next year. Okay, you need to plan now what you're going to do. Think about it now. Not just, I don't know, don't go into retirement with I don't know, because you won't have that sense of purpose, and it's easier for the body just to go, well, I don't know why I need to get up in the morning. So it literally
starts
follows
to shut
suit.
down.
Yeah.
And the men in particular, but this is true for men and women, the men that have maintained a closeness with their wife, or have children and grandchildren, and find purpose in the daily life of their partner, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Those are the people who defy those statistics.
Yes. So yeah, family, and that's anti-loneliness right there. So yeah, I think part of marriage, I think, because with marriage, inevitably there's family, and that whole dynamic there. The marriage should be the foundation. The relationship should be the foundation. So increased mortality risk, without question. Loneliness is linked to a 26% increased risk of premature death. That was a Brigham Young University meta-analysis. It surpasses the health risks associated with obesity and physical inactivity.
Wait, I need you to say that again. About loneliness surpassing the health risks. Say it again.
So the negative risks of loneliness is worse than the health risks associated with being obese and physically inactive.
Holy crap.
So like, yeah, I got to get my exercise in. I got to take my semaglutide and lose weight.
Right.
Yes, important, but actually it's probably far more important to make sure you're focusing on relationships and not being lonely.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Cardiovascular disease. Lonely individuals have a 29% higher risk of developing coronary heart disease, 32% higher risk of stroke. It's according to the American Heart Association. Mental health decline. We have chronic loneliness increases your risk of depression by 50%, anxiety by 60%.
That's so sad. Now, again, I know this is about marriage, but that's one of the problems with the adolescent, the adolescents of today's time, that they're having such an increase in anxiety and depression.
They're lonely.
And it is in large part because they're lonely.
Yes.
We've seen it. We've seen like my niece, even though my niece is really not very attached to her phone. So it's a credit to my sister, my brother-in-law, and my niece. But she'll be in the same room having like her friend over, and they'll be sitting together on the couch, not talking to each other on their phone. Yeah. I'm like, what kind of I mean, I know it's not a play date anymore, but what kind of a play date is this? Get off the damn phone. They're lonely.
Yes. Yeah.
They're lonely.
And, let me just harp again on COVID. That was something that also, it created that then. So we were talking just about probably the average adult, but what it was doing to kids, isolating them, was creating in part this anxiety. Cognitive decline, dementia, loneliness is associated with a 40% increased risk of dementia in older adults, weakened immune system, and hormonal disruption. So one of the common hormones is going to be, you're going to have elevated cortisol.
Right, of course. That's anxiety.
Yes. And this, but serotonin, oxytocin, natural opioids all decrease, all these good neurochemicals. Oxytocin, one of the most important bonding hormones. That hormone has so much to do with longevity, and that's being understood more and more. We've been prescribing that for years. We've seen that help with oxytocin, help with pain, and it certainly helps with orgasm. Right. But it has this ability to actually prolong life through keeping that sense of bonding to whoever you're around. I was training someone yesterday and teaching her about that concept of oxytocin. So if I have a patient that I think fits, I have this game where I say, let's do story time. And then I pull out this big, thick book of all about hormones, and it has all these symptoms in it. And then I just read the symptoms associated with oxytocin deficiency. And oxytocin deficiency symptoms are, they feel isolated. They feel sort of shut down socially. I love my husband, but stay away. My kids are great, but I can do without them for now. And there's a flat affect often in how they're just kind of cold. Right. And so when I'm sitting here as a guy talking to, mostly I will deal with this with women. And so I use the listing of the symptoms as a gentler way to sort of approach it and let the book do the talking. Right. And then I don't know, does that seem to fit? Oh, well, I guess that does seem to fit, they'll say. So it really is a very, very important hormone for bonding. I mean, just sitting here right now, we're staring at each other in our eyes while we're talking, and at least I'm staring at you. And that is increasing our oxytocin sitting here. So this is that bonding of one-on-one and others. So all of that winds up helping with literally your heart and your ability to live longer.
I am definitely sitting here staring at you lovingly, but I'm also thinking that it's to whom they are bound to. Not to who.
What did I say?
To who.
I said
it's
to who.
The object of a preposition. I'm definitely like Yogi Berra, where I like really mess up phrases and idioms and say a lot of things that don't make sense.
But when you see the error.
There's something that's like, apparently everything I learned between first and sixth grade, I learned really well. Everything thereafter
I don't know if I remember saying to who. I did?
Yeah.
To who?
Anyway, there. See, I just expanded your life.
Because of my improved grammar?
Yes. I helped rewire a neuronal pathway that perhaps had been dented. I just improved your health.
I wonder if you were correcting my grammar before or after we got married. Before.
I feel like I've done that always. Always. Like sometimes basic grammar like that, it itches me. It's like, that's not right.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, I was an English major. Very well. Yes. And so whenever I can improve, and sometimes a little idioms come out and,
Yeah, so I'm all for butchering the language, but it's definitely to whom. Okay. All right, tangent. I hope you all enjoyed. Go. Sorry.
If you're going to get married, if you're going to take that leap and get married, it may be that you're generally more responsible, and that's one of the reasons why married people might live longer. We haven't fully answered the question yet, but it might be that...
This is the Danish study? I don't know. I have all kinds of issues with this one. Go ahead. What does it say?
Well, this is the Danish twin study.
Okay.
But this is sort of a sub-concept. The Danish twin study showed that only about 20% of how long a person lives on average is dictated by their genes, while 80% is influenced by lifestyle and environment. So they were actually able to look at maternal and paternal twins.
Mm-hmm.
And maternal, they're identical, and then the paternal that are not exactly identical. And they were able to, through statistics, be able to see what was affecting their health or not. Was it based just their genetics, or was it based on lifestyle? Because some of the twins wouldn't practice the same lifestyle things the same way, and however they pull that all together. So yeah, 80% is really more lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that that's very useful if we go back to, again, another episode that we had talked about, which is this idea of choosing the right mate to begin with.
Yes.
So if you're responsible in making the right choice, then I would definitely say choosing the right mate for you is going to provide longevity, because you're going to have stress resilience.
Yes.
You're going to have just more daily doses of love. You're
Yes.
going to have higher doses of oxytocin because you're in a committed relationship.
Well, that stat alone, now that you're saying that,
Yeah.
and this is and I can't remember where I've read this, but there is a stat with that there is basically the most important decision you'll ever make in your life is choosing your spouse.
Yeah.
That is the most impactful to all concepts within your health.
Well, it's like that saying that I say, it's in Spanish, but I rather better be alone than in bad company.
Yeah.
I think if you're choosing well, it's profound for quality of life and longevity. If you're not choosing well, then your stress is just much higher and therefore not good for you.
Yes.
Choose well. Okay. ¿Qué más?
Life expectancy and active life expectancy by marital status among older United States adults. The results from a U.S. Medicare health outcome survey. So this is a pretty big study. Between 65 and 85 years old, married men and women had a longer life expectancy than unmarried men and women. So, here's just sort of a basic study, a large basic study that is showing that they definitely have a longer life expectancy just in general. 2.2 years longer for unmarried men. Married men would get actually about 12.3 years longer than unmarried men. It's quite significant.
Yeah, that is. 18.6 years. Married women was 21 years longer. Interesting.
So I think, just in general, without kind of beating down all of the basic research.
Get married well.
Yeah, I think that's what we're answering here, that is the answer. But here's another study that kind of answers to one of those questions that I posed early on. Is the effect of marital status on life, or the effect of marital status on life expectancy, is cohabitation as protective as marriage? That's the title of the study. This is a Cambridge University Press. This came out in August of 2023. And it actually it wasn't just marriage, but it was having a significant other that was beneficial.
Interesting.
So it was just as profound as having someone who's committed.
That's important, because especially when we're having this faux feminism, at least that's what I call it, they're saying single women live longer, potentially.
Yes.
But what they're not letting you know is that perhaps they're single in the sense they're not married, but they are in committed monogamous relationships that often include cohabitation.
Exactly.
So that's just a bunch of baloney.
Yeah. So the studies that will kind of come out, and then you'll see people and they're doing their content out there and saying this. They love to say it now because it kind of aligns with a lot of the faux feminism that, don't worry about getting married. You'll live longer. There's all these benefits, but they weren't. It's all in these studies, how they ask, it's how they ask questions of the people, and then how they then present the data and how the definitions of things. So yes, single was just unmarried, but didn't account for the fact that you could be living together and you're getting all the same physiologic and psychological benefits of being married, of a partner, a committed full-time partner.
Yeah, that's misleading, because we do hear a lot of that in modern or pop culture, saying women, you don't need a partner. You don't need a man. Well, need isn't really the point. It's desire. And I would say that most single women that I know, from when do kids start wanting boyfriends? I don't know, 14, let's say. Girls from the age of 14 to 60, if they're not in a committed relationship, that's a big part of their day-to-day existence, is this conversation and search, even while they're fulfilling their own lives on their own, even while they're finding independence, financial independence, etc., even while they are self-actualizing.
Mm-hmm.
I would say there is still a significant portion of their time that is focused on finding a mate, because I do think instinctually we know that we do better when we're coupled with someone committed to us.
It's just so innate. And a lot of what, again, talking about faux feminism at the moment, a lot of what that is doing, it really is just it throws in the face of a lot of really basic things. I think a lot of this is where, like common sense comes into play. And we have very often lately gotten away from just the common sense of things.
Right.
And whenever we get too far away from common sense, whenever you get too far away from nature itself, it's just generally wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think a lot of that is doing.
Well, and I find that this message that, again, pulp culture delivers, really, like, more than delivers, it's flooding us with these message for women that they don't need to be in a marriage, that it's unnecessary, it's bad for them, it's more work, they get the short end of the stick. I think all of that is troubling, because it is resulting in all of this internal conflict, because the idea of commitment and marriage really is foremost, not for all, very innate. So if you have this strong natural instinct to be married, but you're being flooded with the message that marriage is wrong or bad or cheating the woman in some way, then think about the dis-ease women are experiencing, because they're conflicted between what their brain is being told is the answer versus what their heart is telling is the answer.
Sure. And so much of this, we're saying marriage. I mean, these things, the word marriage tends to have biblical implications in a Western society. Well, probably almost any society is going to have some level of, important spiritual, ceremonial significance, and how that's very, very important. But let's say Western biblical, they are saying that, well, you don't want to be subservient to the husband. So women are being married implies a certain level of patriarchal subservience to the man, and based on certain things that you can read within the Bible, because women are, according to the Bible, to have that level of subservience. But that is actually not what the word means. That the word is actually associated more specifically with a sense of power that women will have, because it's a helper in the same way that God is a helper. It's a certain Hebrew word that I'm forgetting, but it translates essentially and it's that same word that is used to reference women for the sake of men. The reference is the same that is used for God.
Yes, in the sense that if we're going back to traditional texts and we're analyzing in the native language, that we are understanding, first of all, words have power, right? So that the word for the female as a helper to male elevates the woman to a more godly state,
yes.
Because she is being compared to God as helper to man.
Yes.
Yeah, and even at just a simpler romantic level, like I am my beloved and my beloved is mine. I think we've mentioned that concept elsewhere. Part of the reason marriage or commitment, long-term monogamous commitment, is beneficial for longevity is because you have someone to weather the storms with. You don't have to do everything on your own. And it is extremely difficult to do everything on your own. Very difficult and lonely.
You said lonely, and it made me think, I don't know if I answered that, what's that called? It's like, it makes me want to say the Kobayashi Maru, but that's for all the Star Trek
you didn't
dorks
get
out
it.
there.
You didn't get it yet.
Is it up
it's there towards the bottom before our summary about the broken heart syndrome.
Well, that's what Tokusubo cardiomyopathy is. That's a broken heart syndrome. Yeah, right. That just makes you sad as soon as I even just say it. So yeah, that sense of loneliness can literally break your heart. So the idea of that, and
so
it's actually
sad.
interesting that it's stress cardiomyopathy, what they're calling it. So it's a cardiac heart problem that's induced by stress, and it's a temporary weakening.
Right.
So it is temporary. So many people can actually get over it, but there is literally a measurable weakening of the heart. The walls can actually temporarily thin, and they can actually measure this. And again, either it leads into death, or they can recover from it.
So literally, we can die from a broken heart.
Literally, yeah.
Because there is actual anatomical temporary potential, unless you're dead,
right?
Anatomical damage to the heart.
Right, and they're back to the idea of support. So if you have other support around you that's outside of even your primary relationship, because you have family, extended family, then they're there to support and hopefully allow you're able to get through that type of yeah.
Or like my mom says, there's nothing like a new love to help you forget the old one. So if you can,
is that your plan? That's your plan. So I go, that's your plan.
Wow, you just took this wonderful conversation into cuckoo land. No, that's not my plan. You can't die.
Oh, okay.
So aside from you and I, we're talking
I'll
for
become
other
a longevity
people.
expert to make sure that I do not die.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And because I correct your grammar, you will live a long, well-lived life.
I will at least be able to
The point that I was trying to make was that we can die from a broken heart, which is so sad. But also, marriage, when you are committed, you go through less of these heartbreak moments.
Yes.
And that tokosubu sounds like a really delicious Japanese dish.
Yeah, it's like some kind of piece of sushi or some kind of specialized.
I don't know if it is
sushi roll.
a Japanese name, but
no,
taco is octopus.
Yeah.
I'm hungry.
My grandparents, my great grandparents, who were the Custers. So
that's true.
Yeah, General George Armstrong Custer was my however many greats cousin, and so I grew up. My grandmother was a Custer, and then so was her parents. And I'm happy to say I had memory of them, and we would go to
the Custer family reunions.
Custer family reunions
straight
with all the other Custers, and
straight out of a Western novel.
Yeah, yeah. And so my grandmother passed first, and I remember going to the funeral, and then I think it was within a month.
He died.
He passed. Yeah.
That happens a lot. The men definitely don't last as long as the woman. If the wife dies first, the men tend to not last as
widows
long.
Definitely last longer than widowers. This is true.
And there is some data out there to suggest that it's because the woman has a much closer connection to the children and grandchildren. So that sense of community and purpose lingers a lot longer. So, I mean, I do think it's really important. You and I always talk about how you have to make sure that you're fostering and feeding the relationship, like relationship before the kids. But that notion of the man in a manly way having involvement with children and grandchildren is so incredibly important for men as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I wish I could remember it exactly. I meant to write it down. Men who have daughters. It was like for every daughter I don't remember the number, but it was like for every one daughter you had, you got 5 years.
Yes, that's right. Men with daughters, and the more daughters they have, live longer.
It was an exponential sort of stat.
Yeah, the girls take care of you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to live forever because I have 4 of them.
You are surrounded by women.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's...
And the nieces and all, they have to count for something too, right? I should add this all up.
I mean, they sure do, because that's the relationship that we're cultivating as a family.
Yeah.
It's really important. Men need to be celebrated and they need to be protected, and then vice versa, right? So what else? There's a summary here of... Oh, we did that, about the life expectancy versus cohabitation. I mean, find your true love. Choose well.
Choose well.
And be worthy. And then enjoy your life, which doesn't mean that it's always smooth, but all trials and tribulations are easier to overcome when you have someone to do it with.
Yeah. And define things. I think that's very important in marriage too. A lot of times people don't have those difficult or not even really difficult, just have the conversation about values.
Yes.
Where do you stand on this? Where do you stand on that? It's and a sense of planning prior to the commitment. It's so often that isn't done, and that's part of the problem, because they become deal breaker concepts that are not discovered until after the fact. Yeah, and that's a big part of the problem.
And of course, those establishing those guides in the beginning is very important, but also keep in mind the idea of growing together. You have to grow together as a couple. The people you are when you're 30 is not the people you will be when you're 70. So if you're looking for that longevity in a relationship, then along the way, you need to make sure that you're putting in those bridges of connectivity. What are the things that you do together to grow as a unit? Because obviously in 40 years of life, individuals are growing, changing, adapting, shifting goals, which is great. Do that as individuals. But you and I always refer to it as the us, almost like a third entity. There's you, there's me, and then there's us.
Absolutely.
How are you feeding the us? How are you growing and learning and planning and dreaming as an us, so that 40 years later, you always find you're connected to each other?
Yeah. And I'll speak for myself. I hold the us at a higher level in my priority than the me.
Yeah.
And then and you do the same thing.
Correct.
And this is what makes that work. It only works when both are doing it at the same time. And then, yes, it becomes this entity that, and part of that us, at least for us, is God. And so when you incorporate that into the whole thing, that becomes a very strong us that's far beyond just each of us individually.
And the only way that couples can do that successfully, that idea of keeping the unit above the individual, is by having very honest conversations about when an individual wants to shift in some capacity. I want to, as an individual, achieve something new. I need to be able to do it with your love and your support and your promoting of me, right? So that it doesn't mean that the individuals don't get to grow. On the contrary, they're constantly growing. They're just growing with a sense of unity, so that the us is always prioritized.
Yeah, I am very focused on whatever your purpose is. And I think this is all kind of coming back to longevity again. And I think what we're talking about here is very focused in on longevity of the marriage itself, but then longevity for the individuals and the us to live longer. If you're leaving room for purpose, and there's always that, hey, what's your new purpose? What's the new thing? We're constantly dealing with our goals. We're always talking about our goals. We're always thinking about the now as it relates to the future in context of goals. That's what helps you to live longer and live well.
You said that about the goals. That's so important. There's a lot of influence out there to write down goals. There's a lot of self-betterment. I think there's always, which is wonderful. I mean, America is a country of self-made men. So I think it's nice that culturally we've still preserved all these years later this idea of what are your personal goals? Great. But one thing that you and I do together at the beginning of every year is we sit down and we write down our goals. We write down our goals for you. We write down our goals for me. We write down our goals for our kids. We write down our goals for our business. We write down our goals for our relationship, for us. And the act of doing our individual goals together allows the grand purpose of us and everything that makes us up, business, kids, etc., to be very smooth, because the whole master plan is designed together. I would recommend couples do that annually as well.
It's one of my, I love to plan. So, and I like to write it down and think about it. I love to dream. And what I've learned is that I love to dream with you. And that gives me purpose. That gives me drive. It helps me to get through difficult times. And there's difficult times are pretty much guaranteed. There's going to be something. So having that sense of us and that sense of purpose really, really drives it all forward. And I love you.
I love you too.
I realize it's been a couple of podcast episodes of me not actually saying I love you. Well, is that a good place to stop? Do you have anything else to say?
I always have things to say, but I do think that's nice and neat.
Yeah, you always do. Are you sure you don't have something else to say?
I'm sure. I got hungry thinking about the taco subo.
We're going to find out exactly how to make that dish.
Anyway.
Are you thinking and liking what you are hearing? You want to hear more? You want others to benefit from all this great content? Do you want us to ask us a question? Please like, subscribe, share, and comment. You can find all of the links to our social media channels and all the other featured articles. We've been doing a lot of articles. We've been doing a lot of other podcasts here lately. Basically, everything that we do, it's all in our link tree, the Longevity Protocol Pod. If you want a little bit more about our personal lives, please be sure to follow us on Instagram at the Sex Docs. Here's where you can comment, ask us questions that we'll directly address right there in our videos. Be sure to subscribe to our Substack. We're constantly putting more and more information on Substack, particularly the notes for today's episode. And finally, if you're ready to make a change in your health and you want to see us as a new patient right here in Scottsdale, Arizona, please inquire through our private practice at hormone-zone.com.